Good evening, everyone. Thank you for sharing this wonderful, chilling New York night to listen to what I have to say. And first of all, my name is Mikhail Kozyrev. I live and work in Moscow. I do radio. I also do television, write books, and play in theater. So I have pretty much the number of bases that I've covered. I decided once that I will do only things that I want to do in my life. So I tried all different kinds of things. The reason why I wanted to talk to you tonight is there was an absolutely fantastic page in my life when I worked on the soundtrack of the movie that is now referred to probably the defining movie of the whole generation. It's called Brat 2, Brother 2, and those of you who have except English, who know Russian, it was funny because that several abstracts that announced my lecture, a friend of mine, a musician from St. Petersburg, he pushed translation on Facebook. And the way Facebook translated it, it was not Brat и Brat 2, it was Отродье. Отродье 2. I don't know how to translate it, probably Scum and Scum 2. That was the name that they chose before for that. And that was interesting translation, by the way. I never heard that type of interpretation. So I was invited by the director, Alexei Balabanov, to help him to compose a soundtrack that will, first of all, be universally popular as much as we can achieve, but also will reflect the spirit of time. Can I ask you who saw the movie ever? Good. That's a wonderful audience we have now. Anybody who has not seen it? No, everybody saw it. So we will certainly recall the most important scenes, because that will give us the ground to speak, to argue, and to share our views. And I, unfortunately or fortunately, there's one big question that I cannot answer throughout rest of my life ever since I worked on that movie. What I did, has it changed the world for good, or has it added more evil in this world? And the more I discuss it with my friends and family, and the more I argue about it, the more unclear the subject gets. So I encourage you to make your own opinion and to assess not just my job, but also how this movie influenced the generations to come. I will start with the description of the 90s in Russia. What are 90s? First of all, the system of coordinates of the Soviet Union gets demolished. It crashes. Nobody knows where is the solid ground where they can stand in this new turmoil that happens, because yesterday's slogans, yesterday's principles, they do not matter anymore, and they all turned out to be absolute fake. West claims that they have won the Cold War, and that's basically what we have to accept. We lost in Cold War, and the country starts to change. Of course, the biggest changes you can see in St. Petersburg and in Moscow. There were almost no cars in the street. Now there's a whole new number of Western models in the street. People that didn't owe anything, because there was no private property, I remind you, before the 90s in Russia, they become obscenely rich over the months. I work on television that is called TV Rain, and I have a show where I ask people that became very rich very quickly about their recollections of those times. They all must say that they started by selling some obscure fake alcohol by wagons, delivering it around the country, or selling the first huge amounts of cigarettes, and no matter what they prefer afterwards, they now are producers, movie makers, actors, owners of big state companies or private companies, but they all started at the bottom, and it was the time when you had an ability and energy to move on. You could move on. You could not achieve anything before. So there is this selected part of the society of people that decided to make their step, and they become increasingly involved in the building of this first primitive and wild capitalism in the 90s. Now, during this Yeltsin's era, the wealth of most of the country goes down, because the state economy, and there was only state economy, gets disrupted. Most of the enterprises, they basically went bankrupt, and all of the people that had their work guaranteed by the government, they don't have a workplace to go. So there's now a huge increasing division between the generations of our parents and the new generation. And overall, let me point out a couple of more things. Changes in press. You now can read anything in the newspapers, and anybody can criticize the government and the president. And that's a totally new thing. You would buy, there were like 5 most popular newspapers in the Soviet Union, and the moment they proclaim, now this is a new party strategy, all of these newspapers will print one and the same thing. This is the new party strategy. Now there are dozens of newspapers, they all print different things. One of them says Yeltsin is right, the other one is completely wrong. One says, we have to impeach him. The moment he comes into the office, tomorrow let's impeach him. The other said, this is the savior, let's just make his presidency solid, and let's group around them. So this is total disarray, but I think that one of the most important things that we should always remember and be thankful to Boris Yeltsin is that he never closed any single newspaper, or by the end of his presidency there were first internet sites, any magazines. He was a lone but solid fighter for the freedom of press. Second, movies. The system of movies around the country gets crashed because there were no private theaters and there were no private networks that could run the films. So now there's, even if you want in the beginning of the 90s to see a movie, there's no place to go. The only places that you can see Western movies are so-called video salone, the little movie theaters where they show movies from VHS. You pay a small fee with a bunch of friends, with 3 or 4 people, and you go into the room like that, and that's your movie theater, where and all of the films they show are from the West. They're mostly major Hollywood blockbusters of that time. The main heroes are Jean-Claude Van Damme, Sylvester Stallone, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Everybody gets crazy on that because you could never see that on the state television. And the third thing is music and radio. There was no FM radio in Soviet Union. There was only state radio. There were basically little boxes in the kitchen of every flat with 3 buttons. And if you push the first button, there was the first program, the state program. The second button was the second program, the state program. And the third button was local station, some kind of obscure local station. And they all did the same thing. Now they start to sell frequencies on FM. And from the beginning of the 90s, mostly French people and American companies, they enter Russia with the desire to explore FM and to start radio stations. It happened that I was invited to direct one of those stations in 1994. It was Radio Maximum. It was a joint venture between Russian company and American company, and since I knew just a little bit how to do radio from my experience in Pomona College in California, which was a student radio station that had no rules at all. But when I came for the interview and I said, well, I worked for 3 years and I had my own show, they said, great, you are the one. I said, but I don't know anything. But here, it's much more than everybody else knows. That was the answer. And by the end of the 90s, I left Maximum and I invented a format that turned out to be a major step in, I would say, even in the Russian mentality. That since most of the stations, if not all of them, would play mostly Western music, I decided there is a room for the station to play only Russian music. And particularly rock, dance and pop music. I never loved pop music, but you could not survive if you play only raw underground rock. And you must also realize that because music industry is not created by that time yet, there are no charts, there are no Billboard official top 40, there's nothing. So you basically start to, I started to receive piles of homemade CDs and cassettes of the people that compose music, and suddenly they learn that there is this strange, obscure radio station called Naše Radio that can actually get your song on the air. And everybody got nuts, of course, because there are no record labels. So basically, I was the one to check out their songs first. There was no one that I could consult or no chart I can look and see whether it's hit or not. So it was basically only gut feeling. At a certain point when I got about, I had to listen about 100 new songs a day, I realized I just cannot do it just by myself. So there were several people with me and we started to screen them all together. But this was an amazing time. If I picked the right song and put it on the air, next morning these people would get out of bed famous. Just next morning. Because we started to play songs over and over, and other stations that would listen to us will also get, and the first club owners, they will learn about that there is an interesting band with a major hit, let's just invite them and the guys will start to play. And that was also the way how Balabanov, being very impressed with this rise of the new authenticity in Russian music, suggested, let's work together, let's get together and make this the ultimate soundtrack that reflects this rise. Throughout my talk, I will show you pieces of the movie, and also I encourage you, if you have questions, just get up and shoot. So it will be more entertaining in the dialogue. Okay. To get you the impression that Balabanov gives to viewers of what was going on in Moscow, here is in the beginning of the movie, Danila, who is the main character, gets to, because he's fighting against mafia, first in Russia and then overseas in the United States, he needs to get some kind of weapons. So they get to the guy who has an underground armory from the Second World War. And Balabanov clearly states, listen, if you get the right connections, and if you got the right brothers by your side, you can virtually get anything. So this is the piece of the movie where they get their first guns. Про фашистов, that's right.
50-50.
Да, вот сейчас у меня проспится.
Что я вам могу предложить?
Эхо войны.
Да. Но вы все наизусть знаете, да? Это даже не интересно.
Откуда у тебя все?
Окей, сейчас еще раз. Мы проверяли, все нормально работало. Сейчас я думаю, что заработало. Isn't it classic? The moment that you need it, it lets you down. Anyway, let me just go ahead. If you can help me, just go with it, or get it in and getting out. Yeah, like that. I think that's the. Thank you.
Привет. Это кто? Ой. Ой, послал мне воле, брат. Народная фашистская поговорка. Фашист?
Данила. Немец?
Русский?
Вообще-то у меня это, дед на войне погиб.
Бывает. Ну что могу предложить, господа? 5 МП, 4 40-х, 1 38-й. Все отстреляно, все в полном боекомплекте. Гранаты. Противопехотные, осколочные. Дают осечки. Примерно 50 на 50. Патроны 2. Извини, не проверял. Вот пистолеты есть. 4 Вальтера. 1 парабеллум. Это из импорта. И теперь отечественный производитель. Ручной пулемет Дегтярева. Считаю масло. 4 ППШ. Машина тяжелая, но надежная, убойная. Тульский Токарев, он же ТТ, сегодня один. Извини, очень быстро разбираю. Но вот есть наган, но совсем не надежный. Время. Стащил ударный механизм. Винтовки Мосина, я думаю, вас не интересует.
Слушай, откуда все это?
Эхо войны.
Сейчас еще раз я переставлю, перекоммутирую, потому что там рассинхрон, оказывается, это неприятно, меня это бесит. Anyway, the way we worked with Balabanov was the following. I came to St. Petersburg to the movie studio called Glen Film with the suitcase filled of different CDs. When I selected something, I got both the musicians that were already on the air, and their songs definitely got some popularity, and also all of the stuff that I listened barely just once and figured out that maybe there is some kind of song that we should incorporate into the movie. Balabanov, which is important, it's a very important strategy. He didn't do the editing of the movie before he got the music, because when you find the right track on the right sequence on the screen, you edit them. You do the final editing based on the rhythm and the mood of the track. And the funny thing was that Lenfilm at that time had problems with electricity, and we worked at nights because for Balabanov that was a convenient schedule, and for me too. So we basically walked for almost 4 hours throughout never-ending corridors of the movie studio to find ourselves in the small editing room that didn't have any sound, and he worked on his laptop on off the battery, and I brought my Sony Walkman, which was the key piece of equipment to construct this soundtrack. So we got these earphones and split it. I put earphone in one ear, he put in the other, and when I suggested one song after the other, he would say, wait, let's find the exact place in the editing and push it. I push it on the CD player, and he did it on the laptop, and see whether it fits the things that happen on the screen. One of the important lessons that Balabanov taught me, and it's a controversial thing. I'm not sure that that this is a universal principle, but I tried to suggest many songs where the text, the lyrics, conveys the message that collides with the things that are on the screen and in the plot. And he would always repeat, forget about the text. Just don't listen to the text. It's just the voice that we need as another musical instrument. Because it's all about creating an atmosphere. And in creating the atmosphere, the words, they do not matter. And most of the songs in this movie, they are selected according to that principle. Except probably for one that I'm gonna show you now. And this is a thing that I'm pretty much proud of. The band got huge popularity, and an actor whose theme is this, the one that we're gonna see now. His name is Viktor Sukharukov. Every time we meet, ever since, he comes to me and hugs me and says, "This is the guy who presented me the song of my life." The song is called "Forever Young, Forever Drunk." Вечно молодой, вечно пьяный. This was a band from my hometown, from Yekaterinburg. It's called "Смысловые галлюцинации," and don't ask me to translate this in English. I don't have any possible translation of that expression, but with this, I think that the words of the song, they certainly collided with the personage, with the guy that is played, who is one of the Danila's brothers, and this is a piece that shows you the chase on the streets of Moscow with a couple of machine guns that they got from fascists. I think that that's a beautiful piece, and you can also see that there were not so many cars on the streets of Moscow at that time. Майя, мне нужна будет ваша помощь. Он опять не работает. For those of you who do not know the plot of the movie, basically Danila in the beginning of the movie, he meets his own brothers, friends from Chechen War. And it turns out that one of his close friends has a twin brother that is on the contract in the United States as an ice hockey player. And remember, the 90s were the time when the first Russian ice hockey players, they got contracts with the major American clubs, and everybody in the country considered that they certainly will become millionaires overnight, and everybody was so envious. Well, it didn't work in case of this guy in the movie, because his salary, according to the arrangement, had to be paid through one of the major mafiosos in Chicago.
His agent was crooked, right?
Yes, agent was crooked, and this mafioso had his counterparts in Russia. So basically this guy didn't see any of his salary. And finally, Danila decides to restore the justice and goes together with his brother overseas to the United States on this sacred crusade for restoration of justice. First of all, when he comes to America, he suddenly realizes that crooks are on both sides of the ocean, injustice is on both sides of the ocean, and even the same, people that want to bullshit you, they're also on both sides of the ocean, which is a very important statement that Balabanov makes, because many people in Russia at those times believed that America is the land of the dream. And that shift of paradigm in major masses, in consciousness, he also picked up very, very cleverly. We always, like in the song that is repeated several times in this movie, that says "Goodbye America," the song of Nautilus Pompilius, the band also from the Urals. I do not fit into your genes because they are small enough. I would probably never see you, America. And we were taught for so many years to love you so much. This is the embodiment of the dream. Well, it turns out that the grass seems always greener on the other side. And the first place where Danila comes to is Brooklyn and Brighton Beach. And obviously Brighton Beach is the little Russia that has transferred with all of its typical signs overseas to New York. This is a piece, if it works out right, where... Я сейчас это не смогу сделать, тем более у меня его нет, по-моему. Давайте попробуем еще раз сначала, чтобы оно сработало.
Брайтон Бич?
Yeah.
Чего орешь? Я по-русски не понимаю. Думал.
Думать меньше надо, соображать больше. И в России теперь. Вот уроды. Каждому надо притормозить и поглазеть.
А что это?
Одним уродом больше.
Это вы про меня?
А про кого? Что ты приперся сюда?
Так, людей посмотреть.
Посмотреть. Я вашего брата хорошо знаю. Давно езжу. Сначала у знакомых, потом посуду мыть или грузчиком в магазине. Квартирку снимешь и приехали. А там, куда кривая американской мечты выведет.
Зря вы. Я родину люблю.
А, патриот. Русская идея. Достоевский. Держава. А где твоя родина, сынок? Сдал Горбачев твою родину американцам, чтоб тусоваться красиво. А теперь твоя родина 2 войны и Крым просрала. Русских людей в Прибалтике сдала, сербов на Балканах сдала. Родина. Сегодня родина там, где задница в тепле. И ты лучше меня это знаешь. Затем и приехал.
А у вас брат в Москве есть?
Чего раскрыл? Рассеял. Проходи давай. Слышишь? Эх, Москва, Москва. Послед. Ну, пойдемте, молодые люди.
Russian ear immediately picks up the accent of this guy. It's a Jewish accent. And the final phrase that this guy sells him the car for $500, claiming that this car would definitely take him up to Chicago. Well, the car breaks down after 100 miles, but the final phrase he says, "We Russians, we never bullshit each other. We can be trustworthy. Мы русские люди друг друга не бросаем." And that is a cornerstone of, unfortunately, Alexei Balabanov's attitude towards Jews. And the accusation in anti-Semitism that rose even throughout the first movie, they exploded right after Brat. In Balabanov's world, you can never trust a Jew. You can never trust a Ukrainian. Remember, in this movie, there is this phrase, "You still owe us for Sevastopol," when he fights against Ukrainian mafia in Chicago. And can you imagine that this is the year 2000, as if he could predict what will happen to Crimea and the war between Russia and Ukraine? While Balabanov listens to all those accusations, and by the way, the ultimate evil are Americans here, and particularly black Americans. And that we'll see a couple of fragments of the movie, and I will talk more about it. But at the times when we were in close contact, mostly Balabanov and his producer Sergei Selyanov, they would always repeat, "Come on, we don't care about what critics say. The main thing is that people go to the movie." And people laugh at the movie. It is strange, but I remember Balabanov repeating the genre of this movie as comedy. And there are lots of different funny things picked up by his incredibly attentive eye. And he always would say, "This is not me speaking on the screen. These are my heroes. And if you can walk down the street or a subway and you can listen to this, and you can hear that people talk this way, why should I avoid that in my movie? I just reflect what's going on in the street." And that, here we come to the very important question that does not have a very distinct answer. Can art be blamed by changing the reality and forming the mentality, or cannot? Because if art only pictures what's going on outside, it cannot be blamed by forming this reality. But in case of this movie, it turned out that, first of all, it was a huge first ever blockbuster since the demise of the Soviet Union. And second, the more time goes by, the more this movie is praised and referred to. So obviously this movie made a huge change in the atmosphere of society. Can we blame Balabanov for increasing anti-Semitism? Can we blame him for reflection of the America that you could see on the screen? That's open questions. Everybody decides for themselves. The philosophy of Danila, who is played by an incredible actor, Sergei Bodrov, and that turned out to be his major role. And because as a tragedy, he died 3 years after this movie in an absolutely paradoxical situation. There was an avalanche that basically killed all of his movie crew and himself, and nobody could ever find the body because this avalanche was moving from the mountain at the speed of more than 100 kilometers per hour. So they didn't have any chance, and this happens like once in a century. So he still remains as Brat in Russian mentality. He is, in a sense, half killing machine and half Robin Hood, because he is for justice. And this principle that you can trust only your brothers it's taken to the extent that almost everyone who's got your blood in their veins, or who is mentally on the same wavelength, is your brother. So in America, he also can find a couple of people that he can claim that they are brothers. One of them is the truck driver. Of course, it cannot be any businessman, and it cannot be any colored person, but the white truck driver is the guy that Danila senses a lot of closeness. And this is the guy that takes him to Chicago. And here is the piece also with Bidva soundtrack as they go to Chicago. I think it's just beautiful editing.
Where are you from?
Ты откуда?
I'm an American.
Я
I live in
американец.
America.
Я живу в
Where are
Америке.
you
А ты
from?
откуда?
I'm Russian.
Russian.
Русский?
From
Из
Moscow?
Москвы?
Moscow.
Russia's very big.
Россия очень большая.
Very big. What's your name?
Тебя как зовут?
Danila.
Danila. I'm Ben. Ben Johnson. I'm from
Меня Бен
Chicago,
Джонсон.
Illinois.
Из Чикаго, Иллинойс.
Danila Bagrov from Moscow. I go to Chicago. Мой brother.
Oh, your brother.
Брату,
What do you do?
чем ты занимаешься?
I'm a truck driver.
Я водитель.
Drive a
Я
truck.
вожу грузовик. А ты?
You.
Студент. Медицинский институт.
Oh, a student. A student
Студент.
studying to be a doctor.
Учишься на доктора?
Yes, doctor. I buy car in New York. Brighton Beach. $500. So,
For that car?
За эту машину?
Russian music. Это новое. New.
Put it in.
Оставим.
Если огонь пепел, день это часть лета, счастье мое, где ты? Только в руках ветер, было теперь нет. Счастье мое, где ты?
I must say that at that point of time, Bidva just sent me a demo record, the band that is now being played in this piece, from Australia. And it was lovely, and I immediately sensed that this is going to be major stars. But when I brought this CD to Alexei Balabanov, he took it home because it was really very late and we were scrolling through hundreds of CDs in my suitcase. So he'll give it a try at home. First thing next day when we met at Limfilm, he said, "You know what? Let's make it just B2 soundtrack in the whole movie. Just kick all the songs that we just selected. This is so good." And next thing I'm trying to persuade him, not at least because there were lots of songs being found by that time, but that was, he immediately, instantly fell in love with this band. And obviously the signature song that comes out along with Forever Young, Forever Drunk is the song about Polkovnik. Nobody writes to Colonel. We will see that final episode. We come to the crucial point of Danila stating the cornerstone of his philosophy. For Danila's world, Danila's world is divided in two parts. There are brothers and there are others. And you never trust others. Basically, others are, you either don't care about them or you claim that these are your enemies. But brothers, it's the soul, it's the spirit. So what divides those brothers from us and them? It is the key answer to the question, who is more powerful? And this is the first piece of the movie when this dialogue happens and between Danila and his brother Viktor Sukharukov, and almost the same dialogue will be repeated in the end of the movie.
Мне тогда еще 20 не было. Университет, перестройка, Америка, СССР. Замуж вышла, потом сразу развелась. Сначала в Нью-Йорке, в экскорт-сервисе работала, это повезло. Потом кокаин, крэк. Уехала с одним толстым в Чикаго, бросил меня. С козлом этим черным связалась. Хотя покойников хлопать нельзя. Ладно, дворами все это. Знаешь, я последний раз так в 84 году сидела. На поход ходила на глухое озеро.
Поехали с нами домой. Там хорошо.
Что я там делать буду?
А здесь ты что делаешь?
А мне здесь нравится. В Америке вся сила мира.
А в чем сила, брат?
А вот в чем. В деньгах вся сила, брат. Деньги правят миром. И тот сильнее, у кого их больше.
Ну хорошо, вот много денег. И что ты делаешь?
Куплю всех.
И меня?
How y'all doing tonight? How you doing? What y'all eating?
Чего ему
Crawfish.
Как захотел?
You can't eat crawfish.
Чё
They
ты
bottom feeders.
Грязь,
You know
говорит.
what's at the bottom of Lake Michigan?
Грязная пища, раки, сорна, грязь, ребята, есть нельзя.
Грязь. Чего?
Shit.
Да ты на себя посмотри. Черный как сволочь. Ты мой дадик читал? А ну пошел.
Нет, go, nigga.
Who you calling
Ты кого
that?
нигером назвал? Сейчас я покажу вам, кто на самом деле нигер. Зря ты его негром назвал.
А он кто?
Афроамериканец.
А какая разница?
Нигер — это для них ругательство обидное.
Да меня в школе так учили. В Китае живут китайцы, в Германии немцы, в Израиле евреи, в Африке негры.
Но мне кажется, сила в них. Вон в них есть что-то первобытное, что-то животное, то, что мы давно потеряли. Поэтому они сильнее. Белые чувствуют это и боятся.
Уходить надо.
Вот суки, раков не дали поесть.
Here is the ultimate rescuer of the white America. Because at this point of time, this is also a certain feeling that you get from the movie. White America is lost to the black America. Now, first of all, if anybody is offended by the language of this movie or by the words that I use, please raise your hand I will leave the room. I'm sorry. The language changes. Obviously, this particular scene sequence you cannot imagine these days in the movies. But at that point of time, he created an atmosphere of, I would say, of racism overall throughout all the layers of American society. And the message that is given, that there is no hope in America, white America has lost the battle to black America. Black America is mostly about either drugs or pimps in the street selling prostitutes' labor. And it is what this girl, what the lady in the scene that plays a hooker, she says, I sense that strength that we lost long time ago. And to fight this battle comes Danila, because since Russia has lost in this huge global Cold War, we should find some kind of the ground that we can start to rebuild the sense of national identity. And what we always wanted, when now I say we, is Russia in general always wanted, is at least to be respected, or better to be afraid of. The world needs to respect us, and if they not, we will make them respect us. And the better they're scared of, the more they're scared of us, the better. And you must also keep in mind that it hasn't been even 2 years since NATO bombed Yugoslavia, which was considered to be a major geopolitical crash, again, which Russia lost. And obviously there are different assessments whether that was justified or not. I certainly stand on the ground that no superpower can interfere into any wars. And this has been a year 2000. So this memory about Yugoslavia and the news that is always on the screen is still in mind. Let me show you another very typical piece. It's in search to rescue this hooker. Danila comes into a very strange bar in his vision.
Как дела?
I want a Russian prostitute. Merlin. Russian. Marilyn.
Snowflake.
Снежок, пошли. Ты куда, мать твою? Стой, пока я тебе не сказал, понял? Ты просто кусок говна. У тебя деньги есть? Туда не смотри, сука, в глаза мне смотри. Ты куда, мать твою, уехал? 300 баксов.
after that, he finds himself in the police department. And that's another very important thing about Balabanov's perception of America at that time.
Have a seat right over here.
Сиди здесь.
Officer will be in shortly.
Офицер сейчас придет.
Don't try anything.
И не дергайся.
Sir, relax. Sir. Sir, relax, sir.
So?
Ну,
Я же говорю, я доктор, турист.
I told you, I'm a doctor.
Приехал к Дмитрию Громову, другу своему.
This is my friend Dmitry Gromov.
Я гулял, понимаете, я в Америке первый раз. Я же не знаю, что у вас тут везде можно
How am I
ходить.
supposed to know you can't go walking just
У нас тут везде можно.
Russia? You can't.
Я на метро ехал, увидел в окошко красивые дома, вышел.
I saw these pretty houses through the window, so I got off.
А около бара какого-то они начали флистовать.
Bar, they started on me.
Я не заходил даже, я же не понимаю, что они говорят.
I didn't even go in. I didn't understand
Ну,
what they
начали
were saying.
толкаться, смеяться, ножиком
Started
угрожать.
pushing me, threatening me with a knife.
Деньги отняли.
They took my money.
Are there any pretty houses over there?
там есть красивые дома.
Who brought them in?
Кто его забрал?
Blackjack, it's his beat.
Черный Джек — это его район.
He didn't bring anybody else in from over there.
Своих никого не забрал.
No, just the
Нет,
Russian.
только русского.
He says he beat up
Говорит,
a
что только
prostitute.
проститутку избил.
He's lying.
Врет.
Okay. All right, you can go.
Иди.
Fuck them niggas.
Долбаные нигеры.
The same snowstorm, the overwhelming storm of applauses that was going on in the movie theater. Fuck them, niggas, that's what he said.
reflected the reality, pretty much.
What is this possible in the movies today? Probably
No.
not. And right at that time,
Russian
yeah,
movies or
say it
American
again.
movies?
Russian movies or American movies?
In both. I don't think that in Russian movies it's possible, that kind of dialogue these days as well. But at that time, that was a major point of controversy because most of the movie critics, they really almost destroyed him for his racist views. Here is the quote of Balabanov that at that time he gave an interview. There are really a lot of drug dealers amongst the blacks. They are all on social security and they all just don't want to work. And Danila, who is plays the main part, Bodrov, he adds, again being asked about the same thing. The Negro problem is a taboo subject, which is it is not acceptable to speak out loud about. These days, black people have a huge advantage when looking for a job. If a black person and a white person go for a job at the same time, the black person will always get it. The employer is simply too afraid of being accused of racism. And I must ask you, how much is the truth? And obviously, one thing that I know is the policeman that spells it out in this movie. This policeman is still doing his army service, and we see it all over the United States. The racism in the police force, it's an obvious fact.
Yes, it is.
So this is, in a sense, a very clever observation. He doesn't identify himself with this police officer, but these police officers are doing their service all around America. And this is an indication that this thing is a real major problem. And of course, what this movie did, it magnified that kind of America in the eyes of most of the Russian viewers. Viewers that did not ever see United States and could judge it only on the basis of either Hollywood, blockbusters, or this movie.
This movie shows that the good part of America is the white cops who are going to let Danilo go because he beat up our black people.
Yes and no. I point out, I don't feel that he identifies that the truth is behind this guy. He just shows this guy that has to protect and has to do justice, inside he feels the same way that Danila feels when he comes to the United States. Yes? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think this is also very reflective of a certain population of Russian immigration here in the United States that at this point is very much supportive of the, and I'm sorry if I'm just, you know.
Offending anyone?
Yeah.
Generalizing?
I can definitely leave, not you, but I can leave. But you know, that is very much supportive of the current regime in the same way, supporting the current administration, the Trump administration, for finally saying what everyone's been thinking all along, finally letting the white man, you know, be in power and say what he feels. And I think that that's probably, there's probably a crossover between the love of, you know, and the cheering crowds and a certain aspect of the Russian.
I know exactly what you're talking about because my Facebook is it is very popular. It's one of the top 100 Facebook in Russia in general, and I do a lot of. It's like my own private media, and most of them are liberal friends, but there are a couple of so-called, and I don't want to offend anyone, Trump heads. And I leave them there just to know their arguments.
It's fascinating.
And that's amazing. The justification of everything that appalls me so much gives them power to say, you know what, finally we've got one person that speaks out the truth.
Right.
That's why we support him, yes.
On a slightly different note, obviously the main good American is the truck driver. But the second positive character is the black girl. Where does she fit in this?
This is something that we never discussed with Balabanov, but I think it's my own perception of this. And those of you who don't remember, Danila being lost in Chicago, he's suddenly hit by a car, and it turns out that this car is being driven by African American weather television weathercaster or newscaster that reports about the weather. So by some obscure reasoning, she takes him home to treat him, and when he at last has the comfortable couch to sleep for some time, when she comes back from work, he has sex with her. And it looks like she doesn't resist at all. She's just, she welcomes him. I think that is a message of conquering. He is the ultimate hero of this movie that conquers African American population, not just by shooting them back and forth, but also by literally raping or getting in bed, forcing her.
Doesn't look like rape, but
no, it's welcoming from on both sides. That's how. But I think that I explained. I am sure that Balabanov would not have an exact explanation of this, just like in many other cases. It's just my perception.
My theory is that Balabanov's trick that he keeps using over and over is the mirror image between Russia and America. There is the Moscow cab driver with punching the ceiling, and the American cab driver. The gangsters in Moscow and the gangsters in America. And Oleg, is it Saltykova?
Yeah.
Saltykova,
That could be the pop singer.
Saltykova's
Yes.
pop singer jumping into bed with Danila. And the same exact mirror image in America. I think it just it serves the
Then we can continue that comparison with you have Jews and Ukrainians and Chechens as so-called others here, and you have Black America on the other side of the ocean, which is also a mirror image because these are others and these are others, and we are brothers opposing them. We come to the two pieces that will show the climax of the movie, and one of them is almost from the computer game. Oh no, let me show you one piece. No, I'll save it to the last because there's one piece that I love most of this movie that I think was absolutely fabulous. But this is a final shooting in a club that is owned by this guy mafioso. And again, we were talking just about the principles. who is right is the guy that has the truth behind him. If you got the truth, if you are on the side of the truth, that gives you power. There's another question, what is truth? What do you consider to be right and to be truthful? And we can never get an answer being literally spelled out in this movie. But that is a key question that Danila uses to segregate. This is my army and this is their army. Because I've got the truth. I'm on the side of the truth. Is truth just shooting unknown people without even asking them questions? Also, this is part of his truth.
Time, it's B2!
Большие города, пустые поезда, ни берега, ни дна. Все начинать сначала. Холодная война. И время как вода. Он не сошел с ума. Ты ничего не знала. Полковнику никто не пишет. Полковника никто не ждет. На линии огня пустые города. Ты раньше не бывала. Поезда, тонкие слова.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
Не стреляй.
Минец!
Don't shoot!
А Минец где? Ваня! Где Минец?
In Menace's office.
У меня с собой нельзя.
DIS. It's all in cash there.
Там все наличные.
According to the script, this mafia was also trading video cassettes with the real rapes of Russian women. And that also is another justification of the Robin Hood and the hero fights for justice. He kills this sort of crooked and twisted and disgusting enterprise by shooting the television set. This song was the ultimate triumph of the band called Brat. And I must confess that when I first listened to the demo, I didn't believe in this song as a hit. It was pure Balabanov's gut feeling when he put this song over this shooting spree. But that became like a label in the business card for Bitva. They always sing this. And my favorite joke about this song is the following. In some distant Russian town, there's the celebration of the day, the town day, which happens like once every year, and they invite U2. U2 comes to the square, central square of city, filled with hundreds and thousands of people, and they go on stage with all this huge production, and they start to play the first song, finish, and they hear that the crowd cheers, B2, B2, B2. Bono turns to the edge and says, what the hell is B2? He says, I have no idea. Okay, let's just go on. And they start to sing where the streets have no names, and there's like their title track. They finish on the B2, B2. why they're shouting? Is this you do bitva? No, I don't think so. So then they get one love, one life, and the crowd goes bitva, bitva. And Bono turns to Edge, says, okay, fuck them. Большие города. I think this is a good one. Anyway, getting back to that key question. Now he faces the main evil, the American that is rich, obviously without any moral values, and obviously the one that he can finally make a revenge for this killed friend of his and for this ice hockey player. And that comes the ultimate dialogue, which is the meaning of the whole thing. And I also want to translate to you the short poem that Danilo recites as he gets up the staircase. This poem first was at the school, and that was recited by the little boy. And I'm sure that if you remember it, я узнал, что у меня есть огромная семья. To translate it in English, it's something like, I've discovered, and he repeats it all over when he comes to make the final revenge up the staircase of the skyscraper. I've discovered that I've got relatives, and they're a lot. There are woods that are so dear, fields of corn, and every year, streams of water, skies of blue. I shall tell them I love you. Every morning, rise and shine. It's the homeland of mine. This is almost the climax of the movie. Beautiful song by Agatha Christie.
Я узнал, что у меня есть огромная семья. И тропинка, лесок, поле, каждый голосок. Речка, небо, голубое. Это все мое, родное. Это родина моя. Есть огромная семья. Тропинка, лесок, поле, голосок, речка, небо, голубое. Это все мое, родное. Это родина моя. Всех люблю.
Когда взойдет весна и смерти вопреки сгорают от любви все призраки глаза, тысячелетний страх колени преклонит и мертвые уста ждут границ. Я не забуду о тебе никогда, никогда, никогда. С тобою буду до конца, до конца, до конца, до конца.
How are you? Well, thank you, I'm okay, I'm fine. Вот, хорошо. О, Russian водка. Good. Давай. Вот скажи мне, американец, в чем сила? Разве в деньгах? Вот и брат говорит, что в деньгах. У тебя много денег, и чего? Я вот думаю, что сила в правде. У кого правда, тот и сильнее. Вот ты обманул кого-то, денег нажил, и чего, ты сильнее стал? Нет, не стал. Потому что правды за тобой нет. А тот, кого обманул, за ним правда. Значит, он сильнее. Да?
Да.
Дмитрий Громов, Маня, давай.
Well, the aftermath of this movie, to cut it short, was the following. It was the first major blockbuster of post-Soviet era, and the soundtrack also is still claimed to be the most successful soundtrack made to the movie for the past 30 years. This soundtrack literally everybody in the country knows. In movie theaters, people cheered to all of the jokes. Critics were very harsh on Balabanov. The tragedy that happened with Sergei Bodrov 3 years after this movie was such a huge emotional blow to Balabanov that he never recovered after that. He shot several more movies and died 5 years ago. In fact, yesterday was his birthday. He had to turn 60. He died at the age of 55. What the most unexpected and obscure thing that happened was that I think that, and that's my personal conspiracy theory, I think that Vladimir Putin studied Brat 2 word by word and scene by scene. And he made this movie the blueprint of his new national ideology. In 3 years since the release of that movie, there were billboards made in Moscow that said, first in Russian, «Данила наш брат, Плесецкая наша гордость, Putin наш президент». Which is Danila, who is the main hero, is our brother. Plesецкая, who is the legendary ballet dancer, also Bolshoi is our pride, and Putin is our president. In all of the steps in ideology and pushing the right buttons, ever since, during the past 18 years, you can sense the lessons of Brat 2 in every Putin's move. And obviously things that you would not imagine at that time, like, for example, war in Ukraine, or like the outburst of nationalism towards, for example, Georgians, with whom we went to war in 2008 in the country, Georgia. At that time, teachers in schools in Moscow were gathering lists of Georgian children that study in their class with Georgian names. So it was a huge outburst of nationalism. Everything is predicted in this movie. Now, when late at night, when I'm all by myself and I ask myself the question, did I do the right thing that I participated in that? I cannot answer this. The temptation was huge. The director of this movie, I think it's the caliber of talent that very few people in the world have. He is as sharp, as provocative as, for example, Lars von Trier, if you know that great Dutch director. And just the chance to work with him and the chance to give new life to so many bands was too tempting. But one question I definitely can answer honestly to myself. If I would get a second chance and I will rotate the story, the history all the way back, knowing what will happen, would I take that offer? Never. I would not.
Really?
No. The consequences turned out to be too harsh, too tragic, I think. Go ahead.
What relationship did you have afterwards towards Balabанов's death?
What is
what,
the
what
attitude to
your
this movie?
relationship with with the director, with Balabanov?
We occasionally, well, first of all, there was another movie that Silyanov, his producer, offered me to make the soundtrack, and that didn't work out. I spoke to him occasionally, very few times throughout 15 years that happened ever since. So we haven't been in touch. Yeah.
So you wouldn't work on this movie if you could do this over?
No, I don't.
Why? Why is that?
You think it's racist?
I think that there are too many things that had such huge consequences in the people's minds after this movie that I would never be able to.
So glorified all the negative
It's
aspects.
glorifying.
But what about all the musical, all the bands that I guess...
I would make them popular without that. No, but but basically on our large outdoor festival, the year when this movie was released, we decided to show it on a huge screen at night, which was absolutely fabulous. And one important thing, as we agreed in the very beginning, we all of the sides, we don't do it for money. We played these songs on the air just according to my ideas and to the plan. We plugged in several jingles from Naše Radio into the movie. Everywhere they moved, they promoted our radio station, and I promoted that movie, and we didn't get paid for that, and there was no monetary relationship between us, record label, and the movie crew, which was a unique thing. I never ever tried that kind of thing again, because everybody was so enthusiastic and so much into that project that we never spoiled our relationships by monetary issues. Any other questions? Yes, please.
If hypothetically there would be a sequel today in Russia for that movie, would you pick up rock music or like a rap hip-hop music?
Of course, rap and hip-hop. That's where the energy is now.
So that was actually my question as well. So, what is your opinion on the current Russian, I guess, music scene? You know,
well, first of all, I think that Russia is a very vast country that is rich with talents, and talents will appear no matter what the social situation or political situation is in the country. They will. Every teenage boy that dreams about getting his message out, he would play in his garage, but these days he will not try to pick up guitar. These days he will put on the synthesizer and the beats and will read out rap music. Because what happens right now is probably such a huge popularity of rap music that we could go back to the days of East Coast, West Coast, and all this stuff, and the names like LL Cool J and Beastie Boys, and there are several incredibly talented poets in the rap music now, and obviously a clear sign that rap music matters these days much more than rock music is the fact that about several months ago, several concerts of different rap bands were cancelled because of different strange reasons, but mostly because of the message that they spread. Some of them are very critical of today's situation in Russia in their videos or in their albums. So that energy, that music unites young people now just as well as my generation was united by the rock anthems. So these days rap certainly beats the hell out of all the other music genres in Russia.
So it's the music of protest now.
Yes, mostly it's there. Although again, I can certainly name a whole bunch of great rock bands that still keep on their eyes on what's going on and do very good protest things on different generations, both from way back, from the ones that were still popular in the Soviet Union. Some of these people are still around and do incredible music. And I mean like the DDT and the Grебенщиков, Aquarium, and Машина времени even, which turns out to, all of them turned out to be true to their principles. But again, after 2000,
that's it, by the way.
That's it. That's right. Out of this
That's it.
generation,
Just three.
that's the end of the story. But from 2014,
would disagree.
I love him, but he doesn't matter. His voice is unheard, unfortunately. Yeah, well, he's not even underground. I don't even. I think that he didn't. He was not consistent. He didn't make a step to make his music more accessible, and that's why he's there. And these, we are talking about people that play stadiums. I mean, the DDT and Машина времени. Totally different story, and a curious one. Yesterday came the news that he is now being member of the cultural committee. So he is.
Yeah, I read that.
So now our culture can feel safe if Sergei Shnurov is going to preside that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's as ridiculous as it can get. But the whole committee is one big joke. Yeah. So I think that today the energy is definitely, the main energy is in rap. Go ahead. Yes.
Can I address the very term, Russian rock, Ruski rock? To the best of my knowledge, especially after speaking with some members of the generation of the 80s, such as Barzykin, Chistякov, back then no musician in his right mind would say, I play Russian rock, я играю русский rock. To the question, what do you play? People would answer with the styles, like, I play hard rock, I play new wave, or whatever. With the advent of Naše Radio, with the entire philosophy of the station, у нас другая музыка, Naše Radio. The way you guys defined the new wave of Russian rock against Western rock, and especially after Brother 2 appeared, you would find some people that you ask, what do you play? I play русский, я играю русский rock. So it seems to me that the meaning has changed, and the very term русский rock, Russian rock, obtained a new load to it. The new it became more than the music, I guess. So I'm trying to find out, would you agree that you were among the ones who were instrumental to define the very new meaning of the word, these two words, Ruski rock? And if yes,
let me just tell you one thing. I avoided the word rock anywhere I could avoid it. I did not do any single jingle of the station with the word rock, because I hate this compartmentalization. When you fit the genres in the certain box, certainly sometimes you cannot avoid that. Like I just delivered the passionate speech about rap. There are many rap artists that would never say that I play rap, because one of the worst things that you can ask an artist is, what is the genre of your music? Artists hate that. Just as well as I was trying to never use the word rock. I said the other music, or the progressive, or alternative, all kinds of these kind of subjects. But unfortunately, at that time, the expression Russian shit rock was invented. Говнорок. And that was a clever invention by one journalist, whom I still haven't forgave. Unfortunately, that's a label that gets on your back and you never can escape that. So this is the term that everybody would use at that time, and this is also it's kind of a humiliating description of the style. I don't know anyone that would say me, I play rock. People, their music speaks for what they play. And you certainly cannot make that generalization about all kinds of music that we used to play and all kinds of music in a different style. So I hate that Russian rock thing, stigma. Yeah.
But nevertheless, there were I've heard people saying I play Russian rock when you ask them what
I
you
feel
guys
sorry
play.
for them.
And I think such phenomenon appeared on the verge of the 90s, 2000s with the advent of Nasha Radio and.
Is this an
brothers.
accusation?
No, I'm just asking.
I had nothing to do with that. I told you I tried to avoid that term.
Now, does that happen?
No. I was just trying to ask you what Russian rock, Ruski rock means to you, but I think you already answered
It's
this.
in Russian language, that's all it is. Rock in Russian language.
No, exactly.
Yeah. And
nobody, Momentore, for example, nobody called Russian rock.
that leads me
They still
to
are.
the final piece that I wanted to play to you, that I told you I'm very proud of, but Momentore, you just mentioned, it was the only band that turned my offer to participate in the soundtrack down. They refused. And the reason they refused because they had really crazy producer at that time, and the producer considered that the size of the band and popularity is by far bigger than any movie ever. And I will show you the piece where we put together with Balabanov, we selected the song that goes like «Мне бы твои струны, мне бы твои пули переплавить в струны», which was an absolute magic at that particular thing. And when we were almost ready with the whole soundtrack, there came an answer, no, we don't want it. So we found another band, and I think it still turned out to be a major piece and very powerful, but I don't know what the leader of this band feels now, keeping in mind for what happened between our countries ever since then. I don't think that he is very happy with that particular part. Maybe. No.
Песня еще высохла ночь, и пора. Минуты пережили, выключить нас. Ты как звезды, двигайся вниз, полночи. Так не сиди, выкресли, нежный мороз. Или для нас люди идут, люди стоят. Для нас пора взять, выключить час. Ты не мой, и не вода, ты манекен. Злива одно, а не звезд, хочу назад. Листа душу, листо хвалит, ты не погас. Мы не одни, мы не живі, виключить нас.
Anyway, I want to dedicate this today's event to the memory of great Russian movie director Alexei Balabanov that could turn 60 yesterday. Thank you very much for being here.